Hi guys, Super Secret Tech, and today we're going to go over a Lightning Strike Juggernaut accuracy stacker. Before we begin, if you would be so kind to help me continue the growth, which I am extremely grateful for, please do consider liking and subscribing. It does genuinely help, as well as if you have any questions about this build or any of the other builds that I have made, feel free to ask in the comments down below. I am very interested in figuring out what we can do to make the build work better for you. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. And this is going to be a little bit different, especially for me. I normally do not play melee. However, this was very intriguing. One of the really cool things about the mechanics behind Lightning Strike is the beams that you're seeing coming off, as well as the strike itself, are about equivalent damage. So it is, and it is capable of shotgunning, which is fantastic, especially for bigger boss models. So things like Brine King or Katava or the Trinity boss, I can't remember the name of it, where like all three of them come together. Absolutely fantastic. And I wanted to kind of do a very quick build guide over this. Now, this is not at all what I would recommend for a League starter. The reason why I wouldn't recommend it for a League starter is very simple. As a League starter, this requires a multitude of very specific uniques. It's all the accuracy uniques. So you need to get a helmet, you need to get one of two unique chest pieces, you need to get unique gloves, and you need to get a very specific type of boot, which only comes from ritual. It is a high investment build that I wouldn't be comfortable recommending for anyone on League Start, because you're either going to have to play it something completely different until you get those things, or you're going to have to spend basically every penny you earn as you earn it to be able to switch over to this build. And I don't think that fosters a good sense of start. I would rather it be a smoother start, but this is something I can definitely recommend if you have already one character. I would say at least in the 80s, you're at least in red maps. This is something that if you want to try something that may be very different, this is absolutely something that's very fun to play. It does struggle specifically with two types of content. It struggles with the damage over time mechanics, and it struggles with chaos degen. So you will see now, currently I am negative chaos res, and I want to be very clear about that. So it is not the build's fault. It is my poor gearing decisions at this point in time. This character is also in the 70s, so it's not as far along as most of my characters are when I done like planning or building or anything like that. I'm also not going to be doing a super complex POB with this one either. It's basically where it is, and so you can kind of see the numbers. We'll say the damage is very good. Probably better than both of my other builds. Tanky considering we're on like 1.7k life, which is insanely low, but it doesn't feel like we're playing with 1.7k life, and a lot of that is the interactions with petrified blood. I will kind of forewarn everyone, if playing on like 1 to 2k life and playing melee scares you, this might not be the build for you. This will specifically kind of be my high investment farmer, and the reason why is Lightning Strike scales particularly well with mechanics that are more closely together, especially since we're running Impulsa. So keep in mind that the more mobs on the screen, the more damage this build does. This harvest is going to go very horribly wrong in the background. Reason why is not only is there chaos damage, I think it's the third one, but there is also degen chaos damage on top of it, which are like the two things this build at this current time cannot deal with at all. And I'm kind of pushing it a little bit too, compared to my level. I think I'm like level 78 at the time of recording this. And so it's something that's different. It's something that you are going to die. I want to be very clear. This is not a hardcore build. This is very much a softcore, I want to do stupid things kind of a build. But if that's something that interests you, this is the build for you. I looked at like 3 different people in POV Ninja who had done something like this, and I had made a couple of different decisions. One of the guys I looked at was running Purity of Elements, which I thought was genius because that solves the elemental immunity problem. And because we are getting some aura reservation nodes, even though it's not like the best aura reservation nodes, I felt more comfortable. Another thing I want to mention is the other ones, he did something that was very different. He went all the way to the very top of the tree over by Witch Start, which let me show you. So he went way up here. He put a single cluster jewel here, and he put a split personality on both sides of this. Now, I like that idea. I think it's a very, very good idea. I think it would add a ton of maximum life. However, it's not something we're going to be able to do before, like at the earliest 90. And I am kind of more interested in spell suppression. So I have the spell suppression mechanical nodes right here, here. And that's just because these 4 ones got me to cap, and they were the most convenient to get me to cap. I didn't get any of the evasion masteries. I'm thinking the 40% encased evasion rating, if you haven't been hit, or if you have been hit recently, might actually be the best one, because it makes it that much less likely for the next like 4 to 8 seconds, depending on how they define recently on that one, that you will get a subsequent hit, which is very, very good. You want those, if you're going to play an evasion character specifically, you want to, it's okay to take 1, you don't want to take 2, is kind of the general rule with evasion characters. The other thing on this one, I believe there was also Corrupted Blood, and lovely, my game crashed. I also did get a Corrupted Blood jewel right after this map to solve that problem, because I noticed that was a very major problem. Especially with us having a very low life total, it is not something that is very conducive problems with. I eventually went back there and finished it, but I didn't want to play the rest of the clip because the rest of the clip is kind of boring. It's me going back and forth and back and forth, back and forth. And so instead, I'm just mulling a fresh new map here. Again, this one, you get to see a little more of just the crazy clear, because it's in a wide open arena. This is kind of where the build shines more than anywhere else. Is like the more wide open the map is, the better this build performs because of the way the beams themselves work. They're very high damaging, and they have an insane pathway as long as you have either a Pierce Gem in your 6th link, which you should have until you get the Helmet Chant, or you get the Pierce Helmet Chant, and then you can add Nightblade into the 6th link setup, and it's just fantastic. Another thing that's really nice because of how big survivability is Impulsa is dirt cheap. So I was able to pick up this Impulsa 6th linked, the one that I'm using for this, I want to say for like 2x. So very, very cheap to get a 6th link Impulsa, which is a wonderful thing for anyone that's willing to play any kind of Impulsa build. The other thing that's nice about having a 6th link Impulsa is, let's say you try this and it's not really for you. You can easily switch over to any other lightning based skill in the entire game, and you have a 6th link Impulsa for it, and you could easily farm up Storm's Gift with this build. So you would have both components for the giant screen clears, and then you could play whatever build you wanted to, which is something that's interesting if nothing else. As you can see, the boss just got deleted, and that's a fun mechanical interaction between this guy right here, Tribal Fury, and Vol Lightning Strike. So Tribal Fury lets it, if you offset your Vol Lightning Strikes by like a meter or so, or like a tile in game, it lets you double shotgun a specific boss, and it just goes crazy, which is fantastic because that means bosses just get deleted, which obviously is very good for gameplay. Now, one of the other things that I'm going to do that's going to be a little bit different with this build, but I hope you try Lightning Strike out, and I hope this is something that may not appeal to you right now, but it's definitely something that makes you think like, oh, I should get a couple of these pieces of gear. Most of it's not expensive. The jewels are a little expensive. Claws were cheap. The uniques are cheap. The enchant on the helmet is expensive. Our farming lab currently, and you're thinking you may want to try this build, I would absolutely get the helmet, I want to say you can get a well-rolled one for like 10 C-ish. And when you run lab, if it doesn't have anything that's good for you, and you ever get lightning strikers, throw it on that helmet. It's super worth it. Even if you're not planning on playing the build, I think the helmet enchanted is like 3.5. So it's a huge profit swing if you get that. And it's worth it, right? Like it's just flat out worth it to have. There is a couple of things that you can do. Now, this build eventually, when we get a higher life pool, will be a better lab farmer. At this point, it can do Uber lab. Would not try to do the tributes yet on this one. So like the 3 Uber labs, I would not try to do on this character yet, at least where I am. Then if you are further along and you get like, I would say mid 80s, early 90s, you're running over 2k life. You have tossed the Vessel of Anchor for another life flask. For lab specifically, a over time instead of an instant. That way you have something that you can proactively pop when you're going to run through traps, because that's kind of important. Almost missed a crafting recipe, which is big. Then once you do that, then you're in a pretty good space. Once you have that pretty good space, a couple of different things. So one of the different things that we can do is we can start farming the really hard content or the really efficient content, and which way you would like to build it. The other part that you can start doing at that point in time is you can go ahead and start going for the segment, line by line, gem by gem of what gear I'm wearing, well as it will go over the passive tree for those of you that don't have access to the Path of Building tool. Alright guys, for gearing, this is going to be kind of our step-by-step item gearing process. So you're going to see what unique it is for the most part, what the gem links are, coupled alongside with the passive skill tree. And for this particular part, I wanted to give you a more screen-based view, as I felt it would be just a little bit more beneficial when covering this. So a couple of things to note: the only position that is actually being activated is the one attached to blood magic, not the one that is independent of blood magic. Ideally, what you want to do there is to drop in a level 2 or 3 inline. It doesn't need to be like level 4 or anything crazy like that. The other possibility that you could put in there would be something just generic as a placeholder. So here is our Ascendancy view, as well as our tree view, and I'm going to stop this real quick. So as far as the Ascendancies themselves are concerned, I would recommend getting accuracy first if you are leveling with the gear. If you are not leveling with the gear, then I would get this guy right here first. Then I would get the move speed second in either scenario. Then either getting accuracy and then this guy, or this guy and then accuracy, depending if you have 0 of the gear whatsoever. As far as the pathing, what I would recommend doing is getting this life node and this dex node, because you are going to want this dex specifically, because it also has accuracy on it too, which is big. You're going to notice the theme here. We get a lot of accuracy. Then I would path down to this part and continue pathing up, and path straight down here, continue pathing up. Like you want to, while you're leveling, you want to get all of your pathing done, hopefully by like level 50-ish, with very minimal pickup. So you're only wanting to pick up like these 2 life nodes up here. You may pick up this life wheel right here, but really you want to just stick on getting all this long tenuous pathing out of the way. The reason why to level it specifically this way is This is why I don't recommend it as a league starter, because if you start filling things in, by the time you actually really need stuff, you're going to have to path for like 15 levels straight. And you're not going to be able to adjust based on your needs at the current time. And you're going to have a very bad experience with this kind of build. This is why I was saying specifically I would not recommend like league starting something like this. Like I would recommend pre-purchasing everything that you need other than like your rings, May belt. I would get all the uniques and I would get a decent ritual boot base. You don't have to get the max crafted one, you can do that yourself, but I would have a very large chunk of gear going into this. I would not try to rush things with this kind of a build specific. You can, it just might not lead to the best experience. But let's go on forward. Then, as you need it, I would pick up additional nodes. Point blank is one I would actually pick up while leveling. Now, there is a couple of different versions of the tree itself that you can do there. You can see it. So we are using Impulsa. Impulsa's very, very strong. The other thing is you can use this with Mage Blood. If you go with Mage Blood, it is extremely powerful. For this type of build, you would basically just replace the unique flask with more magic flask, have a monster on your hand. This would also work very well with Headhunter. Only thing to be careful of with going Headhunter is, as you can probably tell, there's a lot of res on the belt. Now I'm way over cap in most of my res. You would basically have to run Purity of Elements to go Headhunter. That's just something to be aware of. I will post my build link as well as kind of the one that I was following, even though I did make some changes more into the spell suppression stuff. He went into Mage Blood, which made more sense as he was using a brass dome, so he had a good amount of armor, and he was scaling that. I already have two. I have one armor-based character, and I have one like armor ES hybrid. I didn't want another armor character this league. I wanted if anything, like evasion. So that's kind of where I went here. I hope this little section helps. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I do greatly appreciate all the recent growth and success. Thank you for allowing me to do this. It's very humbling. If you would be so kind to consider liking and subscribing, it does generally help me out, and it does generally help the channel grow, which is a fantastic thing. That way I can keep doing more stuff like this. Also, if you have any questions whatsoever, feel free to leave them in the comments. Whether it's this build or one of the other builds, I'm always happy to answer and happy to kind of help you out if you're having a rough spot with anything. But anyway, I hope to see you in Scourge and have a wonderful day.